The chief reporter for Squawka, Greg Stobart, now joins me live via Skype. Greg, great to see you on the show. Thanks so much for your time. Greg, what did you make of England's performance last night?
Morning, Richard. I think I made what everyone else thought of it. It was very, very poor. Like you said before, England have won 14 qualifiers leading into this match, and they were lucky to escape with a point, weren't they? The performance was disjointed. The attacking, I can't think of any real clear-cut chances. It just wasn't coming up for them. And defensively, it was pretty shambolic at times. Eric Dyer came in for Wayne Rooney and looked well off the pace. Gary Cahill was all over the place. And the only reason we're here talking about England getting a goalless draw is because of Joe Hart. And that's the best I can ever remember Joe Hart playing for England. He made 3 fantastic saves. And the second one, the one just after half-time when somehow he's kept it out with a mixture of crossbar, post, both of his hands when the ball was heading for the top corner. That's earned England a point. And it could be valuable in the end because, like you said, it keeps them top of the group with 7 points. And the way Scotland are playing, England will fancy their chances of beating Scotland in the next one.
Well, I was very critical of Joe Hart during the European Championships. I didn't think that he was England's best goalkeeper. I feel he's got a point to prove right now because of that move to Torino from Manchester City. You know, the feeling that Guardiola doesn't think he's good enough to play for them. Before last night's game, did you still think that he was England's number one? And has he now proven that to all of the doubters such as me that he really is the best England have to offer?
I'll answer the second bit first. I don't think he's proven it at all. I think there's a long way to go. I actually think the move to Torino and what's happened to him over the last few months is a good thing because I've interviewed Joe Hart quite a few times and he's really engaging. He's a really nice guy. But you do sense that he's not really, there's a little bit missing in terms of his focus. And we saw that in the Euros where he's made a couple of mistakes. We saw that in Man City quite a lot in the last few years where he'll get beaten at his near post or he'll make a silly mistake. And I think what this loan move to Torino has done is really focus him and it's got him concentrating again. By all accounts, they love him in Italy already. Certainly, I couldn't have seen him making no saves back in the summer that he made yesterday. And he's got to cut out the mistakes. And at the moment, from the goalkeepers available right now, I think he's the best one of the lot. But if Jack Butland had been available in the last 2 international breaks, under either Sam Allardyce or Gareth Southgate, I think he'd have been putting Joe Hart under real pressure. And when Butland's fit, I think that's going to be a really, really interesting competition because Butland will certainly push Hart for a place because I think Jack Butland is potentially a fantastic goalkeeper.
I saw him many, many years ago playing for Birmingham against Brighton, and even then I thought he was a really, really good player. I personally quite like Fraser Forster. I like to see him be given a bit more of a chance for England. Beyond that, I think the depth is pretty weak. I don't really rate Tom Heaton. I don't really rate Jordan Pickford and other players like that. All right, let's talk about the other end of the pitch. England, I believe, only had 3 shots. I think it was on target in the whole game. Daniel Sturridge was up front. Now, I saw you make some remarks on Twitter about Daniel Sturridge, and maybe just tell our audience what you think about him playing up front for England.
Oh, it just infuriates me, Richard. I think you can see the potentials there. We've seen him have a 20-goal season when he was playing with Luis Suarez, but every time I watch him, it's not just for England, it's for Liverpool as well. He just seems to be on a different page to everyone else, but not in a good way. Not in the way you talk of Lionel Messi being on a different planet and just being 3 steps ahead of everyone. Daniel Sturridge feels like he's 2 or 3 steps behind everyone else. And there are a couple of moments last night where he's got the ball in good positions and there are options. I don't mind a greedy striker who's going to take a shot from 20 yards. It happens. But every single time he will ignore the better option to do something silly. And there was one example towards the end of the second half. Jordan Henderson was overlapping at pace, easy to slip a ball in, and he did some stupid, spinny Marseille turn thing. And you're just thinking, what are you doing? He's got the ability to score a goal out of nothing, Daniel Sturridge. But there's a reason at Liverpool, Roberto Firmino and Divock Origi are ahead of him in the pecking order. One of those is the pressing, the work rate defensively, and the other is on the ball. They're more selfless. They'll play the little 1-2s. They'll slip in their teammates and they'll score the goals. And I think the modern striker, especially if you play one up front, which is what England are doing at the moment, you need someone who's a bit more of a team player. And with Daniel Sturridge, I spoke to someone once about Jermaine Defoe, and they said he's the kind of guy, and it wasn't meant as a criticism. They said he's the kind of guy who, if his team loses 3-2 but he scores two, he'll go home very happy that day. And I don't know Daniel Sturridge enough to say that's him as well, but you just sense that someone like Marcus Rashford or a Harry Kane, they're a bit more selfless. They'll work a bit more for the team, and they can still score goals.
Not necessarily to accommodate Daniel Sturridge, but do you think then that perhaps England need to think about changing the formation when they've got so many good options up front? Do they potentially need to play two up front in a 4-4-2? If you look at Daniel Sturridge, one of his best seasons ever was when he was playing up front with Liverpool with Luis Suarez. Now, if Sturridge was playing up there, let's say with a Kane or with a Vardy, do you think you'd get more out of him? And do you think that's something England should look to change?
Firstly, I do think that would be quite a good partnership. You know, Sturridge and Rashford, or Kane and Rashford for me would be a great partnership. I think in the qualifiers you can do it, but for England we're always thinking ahead to the tournament itself, and you can't go to a World Cup and play against one of the top teams with two strikers. They'll just rip you to shreds in midfield. But in that sense, I do think England should change their formation. I think you don't need two holding midfielders now. I think we've seen it quite a lot in the Premier League already. Man City just play with one, Fernandinho. Tottenham are just playing with one at the moment, Victor Wanyama or Eric Dyer. So they're doing a sort of 4-3-3 or a 4-1-4-1, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think England last night needed Eric Dyer and Jordan Henderson both sitting next to each other, patrolling the midfield, and you can push people forward. And if you just got one sitter, it means you can use the legs of the guys in front of them. So what England should have done yesterday is had Eric Dyer sitting in front of the back four, and then they could have said to both Dele Alli and Jordan Henderson that they could make those forward runs. But as it was very stodgy. Ali was trying to make stuff happen. I think Ali is actually, talking about two up front, I think Ali's almost best as that number 10, but not in the floaty playmaker role, more in the Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard goal-scoring role. So I think you could see him as a second striker in many ways, but certainly it was disjointed, and Gareth Southgate only had a week to work with him, but you'd hope it's going to be better next time.
Well, I want to talk about that. You were talking about the midfield area there. Part of the reason Gareth Southgate made for dropping Rooney, he said it wasn't to do with him, it was more tactical. Now, firstly, do you believe that? And secondly, if those are the kind of things Gareth Southgate is making and changing in the team, and then they don't get the result, is he really the right man to take England on in the future?
First bit, I agree. I believe it was tactical. I mean, if you look at it, Slovenia were a lot more threatening than Malta were on Saturday, weren't they? They had three excellent chances that Joe Hart kept out. They hit the post as well, remember? So you needed a bit more protection in midfield. And Eric Dyer was poor, I thought. I thought he was really poor on the ball. And it's not just that one back pass when he's put someone through on goal. He just looked off the pace. And maybe it shouldn't be a surprise because he's been out for about a month with Tottenham with a hamstring injury. But he did make 5 tackles as well, which Wayne Rooney doesn't do. Wayne Rooney's not going to be snuffing out of that danger. So Dyer made a few tackles. Henderson was getting stuck in as well. And I think you probably needed a bit more defensive cover against a side that were attacking, or rather counter-attacking, with a lot of intensity, Slovenia. They were coming at England pretty hard when they were counter-attacking. And with the way Rooney is physically, his mobility at the moment, his reading of the game, I don't think that would have suited him at all. As for Southgate's longer term, look, we can't be judging a manager of an England side off 2 matches in 1 week with hardly any time on a training ground. I actually think it's pretty positive that he's the one who's come in and made the brave call to drop Wayne Rooney, because you showed that poll earlier, and most fans wanted Wayne Rooney dropped. I can't see where Rooney fits into the team. He's not the best striker. He's not the best number 10. He's not one of the best central midfielders. And we had Sam Allardyce a month ago saying Wayne Rooney can play wherever he wants. We had Roy Hodgson at the Euros completely changing a system that he'd used for the whole of the qualification period to fit Wayne Rooney into a midfield role, which he didn't really suit him still. So I quite like that Gareth Southgate's made this really brave decision to drop Rooney. He's got until the end of the year, so let's see how that goes. But a lot of it will depend on other candidates with Gareth Southgate. If you're looking between Gareth Southgate and someone like Eddie Howe, it's much of muchness, really. You might as well give it to Southgate. if you've got a chance to get Arsene Wenger at the end of the season, it doesn't really matter what Gareth Southgate does. You have to give it to Wenger. Sorry for the long answer.
No, it's perfect. We love to hear your analysis, Greg. Let's talk a bit more about Rooney. Manchester United dropped him before this game. What do you think is his best position? Like, I've always felt that he had his best season when he was really a number 9. I think it was the year before they won the title. He was scoring a load of headers from Antonio Valencia crosses, and I think it was one of his best seasons. I think Rio Ferdinand once said something similar. Now, I didn't really ever understand this whole thing of him dropping further and further and further into midfield, because surely if he's getting older and he's getting tighter and he's less fit, midfield is a tougher job because you've got to cover more kilometres. Those are my thoughts. But where do you see the best position for Rooney?
It's an interesting one. You're right. I think it was the 2009-10 season where he scored 30-odd goals and he was absolutely sensational. And that happened to be the year after Cristiano Ronaldo left.
Exactly, yeah.
He was allowed to become the main man again. And I think he's actually sacrificed quite a lot of his career, Wayne Rooney, for other players. Certainly at Man United, there's Ronaldo, or whether it's Robin van Persie. And he's only actually had a couple of years where he's been the main man and had the side built around him. I think he's, in terms of his best position now, I think you've got to take him away from that 9 role just because he hasn't got the mobility. If you look at the way he's, 10 years ago even, when he got his head down, he started charging down those channels, and his, strength and athleticism, it was brutish, and he's bouncing defenders off him. But you don't see that anymore with Rooney. And maybe as a penalty box striker, like we said, in a 4-4-2, as a penalty box striker with a big man or with someone who's going to be a more willing runner, potentially. But I think he just needs to drop deeper because he needs more time and more space on the ball now because his legs are going and he can't move as quickly and as efficiently as he used to. And the Premier League is getting more faster. It is getting faster. It's getting more intense. It's getting quicker. It's getting more physical. Just as Rooney's starting to wane as well. Sorry for the pun, but I'd play him in a number 10 role. Really, his way. I think Mourinho put it right when he said he's never going to be he doesn't want him on the halfway line playing 10-yard sideways passes and Hollywood passes under no pressure. I think in tight spaces when the ball's played into him in number 10 and you can get on a half turn, he can still make something happen. But at the moment, it's a massive confidence issue for Rooney. But as a number 10, almost a Dele Alli role yesterday, even if you play him as a second striker or off someone else. But that's his best position, I would say, at the moment. But he said himself that he sees himself dropping deeper into midfield and he's ready to make that transition. So a lot of it's up to him because he spent a lot of his career being told where to play. Fergie played him out on the left wing at times to accommodate Cristiano Ronaldo. So maybe it's time for him to be a bit selfish and say, look, I want to play midfield now.
See, I look at players like Dennis Bergkamp, who could play almost as a front 2, not necessarily as a number 10, but drop into that number 10 kind of area. I think Shearer started to do that towards the end of his career as well. I wonder whether that's something Wayne Rooney could do, but the fashion very much is to have one up front. I don't think Manchester United would do something. Certainly Mourinho wouldn't do that because he likes to pack his midfield. He likes to play quite defensive. All right, we can talk about Wayne Rooney all day. Let's go back to England one moment. Their next game is against Scotland, November the 11th. What did you make of Scotland's big defeat last night, 3-0 to Slovakia?
Oh, they're a mess, Scotland. I mean, 3 games into qualifying and you'd already say they've got no chance of qualifying for the World Cup. If you get trounced 3-0 by Slovakia, at the weekend they could only draw 1-1 with Lithuania, I think it was. Gordon Strachan's on his last legs, I think. Some of his decisions are certainly frustrating a lot of the Scottish journalists. The fact that he's not playing Lee Griffiths, the top goal scorer in the Scottish Premier League, I think it's going to end in tears for Gordon Strachan and Scotland. You'd have thought, we've been talking about England, you'd have thought they would see going to Wembley on November the 11th as a really good opportunity, but they're a shambles at the moment. Defensively, I just watched the goals back before we came on, and some of the defending was absolutely shocking. They were allowing Slovakia 3-on-1 situations defensively. By the time Griffiths came on, I think they were already 2-0 down and the game was over. they're a really poor team. And you mentioned it earlier, they were the only home nation not to qualify for the Euros, and they're not going to go to the World Cup as well, the way they're playing. And it's really sad because it's been going on for far too long with this Scotland team.
Well, Greg, it's been great to get all of your thoughts today. You're the chief reporter for Squawka. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit more about what you guys do at Squawka?
Yeah, so we're a one-stop shop for everything now these days. We started off as a stats website, and we've still got amazing stats provided to us from Opta. You go on our comparison matrix and a really cool product. You ask on Twitter, we've got 500,000 followers, and if you ask a question, they'll give you a stat back on players' assists, their chance creation, goals per minute, all that kind of stuff. It's really exciting. We're also writing news, we're writing features, and this season we're going to Premier League matches as well, which is really cool, really fun. We try and keep it light-hearted, like you guys. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, so yeah, give us a follow, let us know what you think. We try to interact and we listen to all feedback.
Brilliant. Well, Greg Stobart from Squawka, the chief reporter, thank you so much for your time this morning on Sportuccino.
Cheers, Richard.
Greg Stobart there, really great to get his thoughts on England's 0-0 draw in Slovenia. If you've got any thoughts on England's performance, let us know in the comments page below or using the hashtag Sportuccino.